A routine flight turned into a moment no one on board will ever forget. Imagine settling into your first-class seat, the hum of engines in the background, only to be singled out, questioned, and humiliated all before takeoff. What if the woman who dared to challenge you wasn't just another passenger? What if, in the span of a few tense minutes, she quietly revealed herself to be the owner of the very airline you work for? Meet Naomi Ellington, a black billionaire whose calm composure hides a lifetime of fights won in silence. When a veteran flight attendant's bias boiled over into a shocking slap, Naomi's response was neither anger nor revenge, but something far more powerful. How far would you go to claim your rightful place? Will silence ever be enough to shatter prejudice? And what consequences await the one who thought she could question Naomi's seat? Get ready for a story of quiet strength, unexpected twists, and a reckoning at 37,000 feet. If you're as intrigued as we are, smash that like button, share this video with friends, and subscribe to our channel before you miss a single moment of this unforgettable journey. The boarding process was nearly complete. The jet bridge creaked softly as the final few passengers stepped aboard the gleaming Mercer Jet 810, a cross-country flight from Seattle to New York. The first-class cabin had already settled into its usual hush, overhead bins snapped shut, coats tucked away, shoes slipped off. A soft scent of citrus-scented hand sanitizer lingered in the filtered air. Seat 2C was already occupied. Naomi Ellington sat quietly by the aisle, her posture straight but relaxed, her phone face down on the tray table. She wore a sleek black blazer over a high-neck blouse, matching tailored pants, and low, custom leather heels. Nothing flashy, no logos, no rings, no assistant, just a woman with grace and silence about her. Her tightly coiled hair was gathered into a bun, not a single strand out of place. She didn't need to be noticed. She just needed to arrive. As the soft overhead chime signaled the closing of the main cabin doors, Naomi looked up from her folded hands. She watched a man across the aisle, mid-50s, glasses, navy blazer sip from a glass of pre-departure champagne. He nodded at her politely. She nodded back, expression unreadable. "Cabin crew, doors to automatic," came the pilot's voice, confident, clipped, a few rows ahead. A woman in her 30s thumbed through a magazine. Behind her, a couple whispered in low tones about a layover. Everyone else scrolled, or sipped, or settled. It was just another flight. But Naomi knew better. There's no such thing as just another flight when you look like her. Sit where she sat, and don't apologize for either. She took a breath and looked out the window. The tarmac gleamed under a golden dusk. Her mind, though calm on the surface, ticked quietly beneath. Would today be one of those days? A quiet shuffle of footsteps approached. The senior flight attendant came into view. She was trim, in her late 40s, with precise makeup and short, silver blonde hair. Her name tag read Trina. Her eyes scanned the cabin with that well-practiced hospitality smile. It didn't quite reach her eyes. Naomi noticed how Trina greeted the man in 2D by name. "Welcome back, Mr. Cho. Lovely to see you again," she said, warm and friendly. Then she turned slightly. Her gaze landed on Naomi. There was a pause, just a second too long. No smile, no greeting, just a slight purse of the lips and a quiet "ma'am." Naomi gave a polite nod, unbothered on the outside, but inside, the familiar rustling of armor. She had seen that look before. Trina moved on, fluffing a pillow for a passenger in 1A, laughing lightly at a joke, moving through the cabin with practiced grace. But there was something deliberate in how she skipped Naomi. A choice. Naomi adjusted her seatbelt. She didn't want to start something. Not yet. Maybe not at all. The announcement for takeoff was made. Seat backs upright, tray tables stowed. Naomi folded her hands over her lap and looked forward. Across the aisle. Raymond Cho, the man in 2D, raised his eyebrows slightly as if to say, "You good?" Naomi offered a soft, closed-lip smile. Yes, she was good, for now. But she caught the way his gaze lingered when Trina walked back past her, how his eyes flickered, just for a moment, with a question he didn't speak out loud. 10 minutes later, the plane began taxiing. Naomi leaned back, eyes closed briefly as the cabin buzzed with low conversation. Her mind drifted to her meeting in New York, then to her late mother, who had taken her on her first flight at age 10 coach class, middle seat, with juice and paper cups and a wide-eyed girl pressing her face to the window. Back then, she had dreamed of sitting in first class. Now she could buy the aircraft. And yet, not everyone saw that. The aircraft lifted from the runway with a hum, and Naomi exhaled slowly, her hand resting over her chest, grounding herself. It was supposed to be a quiet flight. She didn't know it yet, but silence was about to shatter. The seatbelt sign pinged off, and the crew unbuckled with routine efficiency. Trina emerged again, pushing the beverage cart toward the front of the cabin. Lexi Moran, the junior attendant, young, red-haired, warm eyes followed behind, ready with snack trays and napkins. Lexi offered Naomi a kind smile as she approached. "Can I get you anything to drink?" "Ma'am, just sparkling water." "Please, of course." Lexi moved off to the galley, then Trina appeared. This time, she stopped directly beside Naomi's seat. The cart was still ahead, but Trina wasn't holding anything. She looked down. That same pressed expression. "Excuse me," she said, coolly. "May I see your boarding pass?" Naomi blinked once. She hadn't expected it this soon. She reached down without a word, unzipping her side bag with slow precision. She pulled the neatly folded pass and handed it up. Trina took it. Her eyes scanned it for a few seconds too long. She didn't nod, didn't thank her. She simply said, "I just wanted to verify." Sometimes people mix up seats. Naomi met her gaze, calm. "Still, I boarded with first class," she said simply. Trina didn't answer. She looked at the pass one more time, her jaw tight. Naomi's voice was low but firm. "Is there a problem?" Trina paused. The cart clinked behind her as Lexi returned with drinks. "No," Trina replied, "just slightly too late." "No problem." She returned the pass not into Naomi's hand, but onto her tray table, as if laying down a napkin. Then she walked away without another word. Lexi gave Naomi an apologetic look as she placed the sparkling water on her tray. Naomi simply nodded. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The energy in the cabin had already changed. And in seat 2C, Naomi Ellington stared out the window again, but this time she wasn't watching the clouds. She was watching the storm coming. And deep down, she knew this flight was about to descend long before it landed. The glass of sparkling water on Naomi's tray had long gone flat. She hadn't touched it since Trina dropped her boarding pass on the tray like it was something she'd found on the floor. She just sat there, quiet, calm, looking out the window at the layered clouds beneath them. To anyone glancing her way, she looked unbothered, maybe tired, maybe reflective. But Naomi Ellington was neither of those things. She was alert, she was measuring, because she had learned, long ago, that silence is a currency. You don't waste it on people who have already decided what you are. The hum of the aircraft filled the cabin. Passengers were drifting into comfort, some already napping, others watching in-flight movies with headphones, the way travelers do when they're just trying to get through the hours. And then Trina McCall returned. She came up the aisle with more purpose this time, her steps a little sharper, her expression more resolved. Something was different. Naomi felt it before the woman even opened her mouth. She stopped again at Naomi's seat. This time, without preamble, she said, "I'll need you to come with me." Naomi turned her head slowly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I need to speak with you. In the galley." Naomi blinked once. There was no please, no explanation, just authority, offered like a slap. Naomi leaned back slightly in her seat. "If there's something you need to say," she said, voice calm and measured, "you can say it here." Trina's jaw tensed. "I don't want to make this a thing," she said, her voice tight, "but I need you to come with me now." 2 rows ahead. A passenger turned slightly to look back. Behind them, the quiet whisper of curiosity had begun. Naomi didn't move. "I'm comfortable where I am," she said simply. "Ma'am, if you don't comply, I'll have to contact the captain." There it was, the escalation. The thing Naomi always saw coming but could never fully prepare for. Her heart beat once, hard, then settled. She shifted her shoulders slightly. At that moment, Lexi Moran appeared from the galley behind them. She paused when she saw Trina standing over Naomi again. Her brow furrowed. "Is everything all right?" Lexi asked carefully. "She's refusing to cooperate," Trina said before Naomi could open her mouth. Lexi blinked, confused. With what Trina didn't answer. For a second, her face showed something close to panic, like she hadn't expected Lexi to question her. She regrouped fast. "I just need to verify something. There may have been a ticketing error." Lexi looked at Naomi, then at the seat number. Her voice dropped a register. "Trina, she's in 2C. The manifest is clear." Trina shook her head quickly, as if trying to rewrite the reality in front of her. "I know. I just need to confirm it." Passengers were fully alert now. Raymond Cho put down his glass. Dina Harper, 2 rows up, slowly pulled out her phone under her blanket. Naomi sat very still. Her voice, when it came, was soft but precise. "I gave you my ticket once already." "You did," Trina replied, "but mistakes happen. Maybe someone switched seats at boarding." Naomi tilted her head. "So, you're checking everyone again." No answer. "Just me, then." Silence. Trina shifted on her feet. She opened her mouth, closed it. Lexi stepped forward, speaking more firmly now. "Trina, I scanned her ticket myself. Her name matches the manifest. The seat is correct." Trina's eyes flickered. Something had cracked under the surface. But she doubled down. "I have the right to verify if I suspect irregularities," she said, based on what Naomi asked quietly. Trina's mouth moved like she was about to say something that even she knew wouldn't land well, but the words didn't come. The air in the cabin felt heavier now. Lexi looked around. Passengers were watching openly. The atmosphere had turned. Naomi reached slowly into her side bag again and retrieved her boarding pass. She held it up between 2 fingers. "You want to check it?" she said. "Go ahead." Trina reached out, and Naomi pulled it back, just a fraction of an inch. "No," she said, "not you." She extended the pass toward Lexi. Lexi hesitated, then accepted it gently. She read it, held it up for the nearby passengers to see, then looked directly at Trina. First class, 2C, Naomi Ellington, verified. Trina didn't move. Naomi turned her head and looked directly at her. That's twice now. She said, "You've checked my seat. Twice. You found no issue, and yet you continue to imply there's a problem." I never said Trina began. "No," Naomi interrupted, voice still soft. "You didn't. You never said it out loud." There was a long silence. Raymond Cho spoke for the first time. "I've been flying with Mercer Jet for 7 years," he said, his voice clear, calm. "I've never once had to show my ticket twice." Murmurs from the other rows. Lexi handed the pass back to Naomi. Naomi placed it carefully into her side bag, her hands calm, methodical. Dina Harper raised her phone slightly. Naomi didn't smile. She didn't frown. She simply looked back at Trina with an expression that was unreadable, but something in her eyes made the older woman take a small step back. "You know what this is," Naomi said, and Trina did. Everyone did. Trina swallowed. "I'll be reporting this," Naomi said, her tone like glass, smooth, cold, unbreakable. Trina said nothing. For the first time since the confrontation began, she looked uncertain. Naomi turned back to the window. The clouds looked the same, but everything inside the cabin had changed. As Trina stepped back, Lexi remained a moment longer. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Naomi didn't respond. She didn't need to. Lexi understood. Naomi wasn't surprised. She was used to this, but this time, it wasn't going to end the way Trina McCall expected. This time, the seat she tried to challenge didn't belong to a woman who was lucky to be there. It belonged to the woman who bought the plane. And soon. Everyone on board would know it. The cabin tried to return to normal. The beverage cart moved again. The hum of engines continued. A few passengers cautiously pulled their headphones back on. But the air inside the first-class section wasn't the same. It had changed. Not loudly, not visibly, but it had changed. Naomi Ellington sat silently in 2C, her hands folded on her lap. Her posture was as composed as it had been when she boarded. Her face didn't show frustration or anger, but something inside her had shifted. She wasn't just alert anymore. She was done giving grace. Across the aisle. Raymond Cho looked at her, hesitated, then went back to his Kindle. Dina Harper, further down the row, hadn't stopped glancing her way since the boarding pass scene, but Naomi wasn't thinking about them. She was thinking about control, not the kind you yell to assert, the kind you keep so still, so precise, that nobody even sees it until it's too late. From the galley behind her, Naomi could hear the murmured voices of the 2 flight attendants. Trina was whispering, but her tone was tight and clipped. Lexi's voice was lower, harder to read. Naomi didn't need to hear the words. She knew exactly how it would go. The moment was already being rewritten, just a miscommunication. She was just doing her job. Maybe the system glitched. Maybe Naomi looked confused. Maybe she had given off an attitude. There was always a script. The thing Naomi had learned over the years, painfully, patiently, was that people like Trina McCall never imagined someone like her belonged in a seat like this. Even when she had the ticket, even when she had the name, even when she had paid quietly, without asking for extra pillows or pre-boarding. It wasn't just about policy. It was about perception. She could feel the heat of it rising in her chest, that quiet anger. the kind that doesn't explode but tightens everything inside. She closed her eyes for a second and thought of her mother again. It had been 29 years since that flight to Detroit. Naomi had been 12, wearing a cheap purple hoodie, a backpack stuffed with her favorite books, and sitting beside her mother in row 32. Her mother had whispered then, as a white man stepped over them to get to the restroom and bumped Naomi's arm without apology. "Keep your head high, baby. Don't ever shrink yourself, even when the world wants you to." She remembered it like it was yesterday. Now, decades later. She sat in first class, wearing hand-stitched Italian fabric, having spent a lifetime building an empire in silence. And still, someone needed her to prove she belonged. Naomi didn't open her eyes when she heard footsteps approaching again. She didn't have to. She knew it was Trina. "Ma'am," Trina said. Her voice was flatter this time. "Colder. I'm going to need you to move to the galley now." Naomi's eyes opened, slowly, calmly. She turned and looked up at Trina. "Are you serious?" she asked. Trina didn't blink. "We need to clarify a discrepancy." Naomi narrowed her gaze slightly. "You've checked my boarding pass twice. Your co-attendant verified the manifest. You've spoken to me publicly. You've escalated without cause. Now you want me to leave my seat." Trina shifted, clearly tense, but refusing to back off. Naomi let the moment hang. "I'm not moving," she said. "You don't have a choice," Trina said, her voice tightening. Naomi smiled then, a slow, dangerous smile. "You really want to play this game?" Passengers were fully paying attention now. Some tried not to make it obvious, but the energy said everything. The man in 3A actually took out an AirPod. A woman behind Naomi paused her movie and leaned slightly forward. Lexi appeared again from the galley, a tray in her hands, but when she saw what was happening, she stopped short. "Trina," she said, "can we talk? She's refusing to cooperate." Trina interrupted again. Lexi looked between the two women, clearly caught in a storm she didn't start. "What exactly is the issue?" she asked. Naomi answered for her. "The issue," she said evenly, "is that I'm a black woman in a luxury seat, and it's upsetting her idea of what belongs." A few passengers inhaled audibly. Trina's eyes widened just a little. "That is not." "Then say it," Naomi said quietly. "Say what the real issue is. Don't dance around it." Trina's jaw clenched. Lexi shifted her weight. "Maybe we should get the captain involved," she said softly. "Not as a threat, but as a plea." Trina didn't answer. She just stood there, trembling slightly, not with fear, but with pride. Naomi could see it. That same fire she'd seen in a dozen boardrooms, in hotel lobbies, in gala banquets where someone would ask her if she was part of the staff and not the keynote speaker. Pride makes people reckless, and Trina McCall was about to be very reckless. Before anyone could speak, Trina leaned forward. Her hand reached toward Naomi's shoulder. Lexi's voice came too late. "Trina, no." But the hand landed. It wasn't violent, it wasn't forceful, but it was deliberate. Fingers on Naomi's shoulder, pressure, a physical attempt to move her, and that was the moment. That was the line. Naomi's body didn't flinch, but her eyes locked with Trina's in a way that sent a chill across the entire cabin. A gasp rippled from 3 rows back. Raymond sat up straighter. Naomi spoke. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The voice was soft, dead calm. Lexi stepped in immediately, grabbing Trina's arm and pulling her back. "Trina, what are you doing?" Naomi reached into her handbag, pulled out her phone, and pressed a single button. The screen lit up. She placed the phone against her ear. "Yes," she said. "Activate Clause 14. This is Ellington, on Flight 92. Confirm authority override. I've been physically engaged by in-flight staff. Yes, proceed." She ended the call. Trina had turned ghostly pale. Passengers stared. Nobody was even pretending anymore. Lexi whispered, "Ellington." Raymond Cho blinked, as in Ellington Aviation. Naomi placed the phone gently back on the tray. She turned and looked directly at Trina. "I own this airline," she said, and just like that, the silence inside the cabin cracked open. You could have heard a pin drop. After Naomi Ellington spoke those 6 words, "I own this airline." The cabin was frozen in a kind of stunned stillness. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The authority in her voice cut through the ambient hum of the engines and silenced every whisper, every flicker of doubt. Trina McCall's mouth was slightly open. Her hand hovered in midair, as if her brain hadn't yet caught up with her actions. Her posture, once so confident and controlling, now trembled on a fragile thread of disbelief. Lexi Moran stood between them, her tray abandoned, her eyes wide. Her breathing was shallow. She looked like someone who had just stepped into a moment too big for her, too fast. Naomi didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice or look around for validation. She just sat there, regal and still, as if she had always belonged in that seat and everyone else was just catching up to that truth. Raymond Cho blinked several times, as if trying to reset what he'd just heard. Then he leaned forward and said to no one in particular, "Holy hell." Donna Harper, halfway through a recorded podcast on social justice, had lowered her earbuds. She stared openly now, her phone still recording from beneath her tray table. Lexi took a careful step forward and addressed Naomi, her voice unsteady. "Miss Ellington, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." Naomi held up one hand gently. "You don't need to apologize for what you didn't do." Lexi's throat tightened. She nodded once, eyes darting toward Trina, who still hadn't moved. Naomi turned to her, the calm in her voice now laced with something else. Iron, precision. "Say it." Trina's eyes snapped back to focus. "What? Say what the real problem was. Say what this was really about." "I told you," Trina began, voice breaking. "I was following protocol. I just needed to make sure." Naomi interrupted her, not loudly, but forcefully enough to silence her mid-sentence. "No, you weren't, and we both know it." Naomi leaned forward just slightly. Her tone didn't shift, but her presence expanded. It filled the space between them. "You never asked anyone else for their ticket. You didn't check seat 2D. You didn't question 3A. You didn't second-guess a single white face in this cabin. You only stopped at me." Trina swallowed hard. Her eyes flickered, scanning the faces of the now silent passengers. They weren't avoiding her gaze. They were holding it, studying her, witnessing. Naomi gestured toward Raymond. "Did you ask him to verify his boarding pass?" Raymond sat straighter. "Nope," he said aloud. "Not once." Naomi gestured toward Dina, and her. Dina shook her head. "No, ma'am, I wasn't even looked at." Naomi's voice was lower now, but no less powerful. "Then say it. Say why I was the only one who made you nervous." Trina's lips parted, but there were no words. Naomi gave her a look of pure patience, not forgiveness, not fury, something heavier. "Say it out loud," she repeated. Trina's face flushed red, then pale, then red again. Her fingers twitched at her sides. For a brief moment, the layers cracked, the mask slipped. "Because you didn't look like," Trina began, then caught herself. But the damage was already done. Naomi didn't react. She didn't need to. The entire cabin had heard it. Lexi took another step back, her face falling. Trina exhaled sharply, suddenly defensive, suddenly panicked. "I didn't mean it like that. I wasn't trying to be racist. I've always treated passengers with respect." Naomi tilted her head slowly. "Even when you put your hands on them." Trina froze again. Lexi stepped forward, her voice hushed and horrified. "You touched her! Trina, you grabbed her!" "It wasn't," Trina started, but she couldn't even finish the sentence. Her voice died in her throat. Naomi turned back toward her tray table, calmly reaching for her phone. "The call is already in motion," she said. "Legal and operations have been notified. You'll be met at the gate." Trina flinched, the words hitting her like turbulence. "You can't be serious." Naomi looked at her, expression unreadable. "I didn't even raise my voice," she said. "And still, you reached for control. That's the real issue, isn't it? I didn't make myself small enough for you. I didn't explain enough. I didn't apologize for being in your way." Trina shook her head rapidly, tears starting to form at the edges of her eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know who you were." Naomi's face didn't soften. "But that's the point. You shouldn't have had to know. I should have been allowed to sit here in peace, like anyone else." Silence stretched again. Lexi gently took Trina's arm and guided her toward the galley. Not forcefully, but firmly. "I think it's best you step away now," she said softly. Trina didn't resist. Her eyes were glazed, her steps slow. She looked back once, as if still hoping to reverse the past 30 minutes. But it was too late. Naomi returned to her seat. The energy around her had changed again, but not the way it had before. This time, it wasn't curiosity or suspicion. It was recognition. It was respect. Raymond leaned across the aisle slightly. "Miss Ellington," he said, "just wanted to say thank you for not letting that slide." Naomi glanced at him. "Some things shouldn't fly," she replied. He nodded slowly. "Well said." Behind them, a flight intercom clicked on. "This is your captain. We're aware of an onboard situation and have been in communication with ground control. Please remain calm. We'll be landing as scheduled in approximately 2 hours." The voice belonged to Captain Ronald Hayes. Naomi nodded to herself. He knew now. They all did. She wasn't just a passenger in seat 2C. She was the woman who wrote the paychecks, and the storm wasn't over. Not yet. The galley door slammed shut behind Trina McCall with a metallic thud that echoed faintly through the first-class cabin. Naomi Ellington didn't flinch. She remained in her seat, eyes half closed, fingers laced calmly on her lap. She didn't check her phone. She didn't sip her water. She just breathed, in and out, slow, controlled, measured. But inside her, the stillness was deceptive. She had felt that moment before when an unseen boundary was crossed and power shifted. It didn't announce itself. It didn't scream. It just shifted, like the moment a plane leaves the ground. A subtle release, but everything changes. That's where they were now. Only some people on this flight didn't realize it yet. She opened her eyes slowly and looked around. The man in 3A, who had removed his AirPods earlier, had not put them back in. He was pretending to stare at the in-flight screen, but his eyes kept drifting to Naomi. Raymond Cho, still across the aisle, gave her a small nod if she happened to glance over an acknowledgement, a quiet solidarity. Lexi Moran reappeared a few moments later from the galley, holding a glass of club soda in a trembling hand. Her face was pale, her movements distracted. She placed a drink on a tray for a passenger in 1A but nearly knocked over a napkin. She was rattled. Naomi could see it. Lexi glanced toward Naomi, then looked away quickly. Naomi understood. The girl was young, well-meaning, but this was bigger than her now, bigger than service, bigger than routine. And then, as if on cue, the curtain between the galley and the first-class cabin fluttered. Trina stepped through again, but this time she looked different. There was a tightness in her jaw. Her eyes darted toward the captain's door, then toward Naomi's seat. Her fists were clenched slightly at her sides. Her cheeks were flushed. Her walk faster, less composed. Naomi felt the air shift again. She could tell Trina had made a decision in that galley. It wasn't the right one. Trina marched straight to 2C and stood directly over her again. You could hear the clink of glassware and the hum of engine turbines. Everything else was still. You had no right to do that, Trina said through her teeth. Naomi didn't move. Do what call operations, threaten my job, embarrass me in front of the entire cabin. I didn't embarrass you, Naomi said calmly. You did that yourself. Trina's breath hitched. This is my aircraft, she said, voice rising. My cabin. Naomi raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Trina's lips quivered. Lexi appeared again, sensing the tension and rushing to close the distance. Trina, maybe we should step away. Let things calm down. I'm calm, Naomi said softly. She's not. Trina's chest was heaving now. You think just because you have money, Naomi cut in? Her tone now a shade colder. This isn't about money. This is about how you handled a passenger. It just so happens you picked the wrong one. Trina's jaw snapped shut, and then it happened. It was fast, too fast for anyone to process until it was done. Trina took one step forward, her arm lifting as if to gesture, but her fingers grazed Naomi's shoulder. Again, without invitation. Naomi raised a hand instinctively to push her away. Not forcefully, just enough to say that's enough. And in that moment of contact, Trina slapped her, open palm, across the cheek, sharp, audible, real. The gasp that came from the first-class cabin was collective, widespread, immediate. Lexi screamed, "Oh my God!" Raymond's seat creaked as he jumped up. Dina Harper's phone was already up, the screen catching every pixel of what had just happened. The entire cabin seemed to reel back. Naomi didn't speak. She didn't shout. She didn't flinch. She simply raised a hand to her face and touched the spot where Trina's hand had landed. Then she looked up, and in her eyes there was no fury, just something colder, something final. Trina seemed to realize it at the same time as everyone else. She stepped back, blinking rapidly, as if her body had acted before her brain. I didn't mean Naomi stood. It was the first time she had risen since she boarded, and when she stood, she didn't tower. She redefined the space. Her height wasn't in inches. It was in silence, in posture, in power. You laid hands on a passenger, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Do you understand what that means? Trina stammered. Lexi's face had gone white. She rushed forward, pulling Trina backward, physically guiding her toward the galley again. Captain Hayes, Lexi shouted, "Captain, we need you out here now." The cockpit door clicked open seconds later. Captain Ronald Hayes emerged, veteran, calm, tall, face lined with experience. He took one look at Naomi's face, then at Trina's. "What the hell happened?" he asked sharply. Lexi answered for him. "She hit Miss Ellington. She hit her." Captain Hayes's jaw clenched. "Get her to the galley, now." Trina, for once, didn't argue. She let herself be led away. Naomi stood in the center of the cabin. The cabin lights glinted off her cheek. Passengers weren't whispering anymore. They were watching. They were listening. Some of them were still recording. Captain Hayes approached Naomi. "I'm so sorry, Miss Ellington," he said, his voice quiet, urgent. "I just got the call from legal. They've confirmed everything." "I know," Naomi said. "We're 45 minutes from descent. We'll be met at the gate. They're pulling her records. She won't fly again." Naomi nodded. "I'll stay in my seat," she said. "But I want HR on the jet bridge. Monica Sterling. She knows who I am. She'll be there." Naomi returned to her seat without another word. She sat, adjusted the tray, picked up her phone. Dina leaned slightly toward her from a row back. "Ma'am," she began, hesitantly. Naomi looked over. "I just want to say thank you," Dina said, "for not letting her get away with it, for not staying quiet." Naomi nodded once. Sometimes silence is too expensive. The cabin remained hushed. Naomi closed her eyes, and finally, she allowed herself to exhale. Not in surrender, but in completion. The line had been crossed, and now the consequences were boarding. The galley door didn't slam this time. It clicked shut, quiet and controlled, as if even the hinges had absorbed the gravity of what just happened. Inside the first-class cabin, silence had weight. It pressed into every corner, slipped beneath every seat, settled between passengers like invisible fog. Naomi Ellington sat completely still. Her cheek still tingled from the impact of Trina's hand. But that wasn't what was pulsing in her mind. It wasn't pain. It wasn't shock. It wasn't even rage. It was calculation. There was always a part of Naomi that remained removed, detached, not because she lacked feeling, but because her entire life had trained her to stay calm when others tried to break her center. That part of her was now at the forefront. Inhale, hold, exhale. Don't react the way they expect you to. Don't give them what they can weaponize. Let them destroy themselves. Across the aisle, Raymond Cho sat forward in his seat, elbows on knees, jaw set. He had abandoned his reading long ago. There was something in his expression that Naomi recognized. Not pity, not discomfort. Something like admiration, or maybe shame. The kind that came from realizing you had witnessed something wrong and didn't stop it in time. Dina Harper was still recording. She wasn't trying to hide it anymore. Her phone was steady in her hand, pointed subtly but clearly toward Naomi's side of the cabin. A man behind her leaned toward his companion and whispered too loudly. Did she say owner? The other responded under her breath, "I think she owns the entire airline." Naomi ignored them. Her phone buzzed in her palm. A text flashed on the screen. "Monica Sterling confirmed. HR team will meet you at Gate 12B. Statement already requested. Captain Hayes has full discretion to restrict crew mid-flight if necessary. You're covered." Naomi read the message, locked her phone, and slid it into her bag. She wasn't worried about coverage. She was thinking about impact. Trina McCall hadn't just slapped a passenger. She had slapped Naomi Ellington, founder and majority owner of Ellington Air Group, the parent company of Mercer Jet. A woman who had built a legacy not by screaming louder, but by moving strategically. And now, that legacy would speak for itself. The curtain fluttered again. Lexi Moran stepped out of the galley, pale, shaken, and holding a glass of water. She knelt slightly beside Naomi's seat. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, barely above the hum of the cabin. "I don't know what to say. I didn't know she was going to do that." Naomi looked at her, not with anger, but with clarity. "You don't have to say anything," she said. "I should have done more earlier," Lexi whispered, guilt swimming behind her eyes. "I knew something felt off. I felt it from the moment she questioned your ticket." Naomi's voice was quiet but direct. "You noticed. That's already more than most." Lexi bit her lip. "She's not a bad person. She's been working in this industry forever. She's just old school. She doesn't think she's biased, but sometimes it comes out in these ways. Subtle things." Naomi nodded once. "I don't need her to be a monster," she said. "Just being wrong was enough." Lexi looked like she might cry. She blinked fast, composing herself, then stood. "I'll be in the galley if you need anything." And Miss Ellington, Naomi turned toward her. "I admire how you handled this. Truly." Naomi gave a soft nod. "It's not the first time." Lexi stepped away, back behind the curtain. Naomi looked out the window again. The clouds outside were soft and endless, like nothing had happened, like the world still turned indifferent. But inside her chest, something small cracked. She'd kept it all together, the restraint, the composure, the silence, and yet she felt the cost of it. The emotional fatigue, the bruising that didn't show on skin. She leaned back in her seat, letting her thoughts drift. She remembered a time when she didn't have this power, when she had to stay quiet, not because it was wise, but because it was the only way to survive. She remembered being talked over in investor meetings, brushed aside by lawyers who assumed she was the assistant, questioned at security because she carried her own bags. She remembered her father once telling her, "Baby, you'll have to be twice as calm and 3 times as good just to be seen as competent." And so, she had been. All her life, twice as calm, 3 times as good. And even now, owning the airline, signing the paychecks, writing the policy manuals, someone still looked at her and saw a seat that didn't fit. There was grief in that, not a loud kind, a quiet, aching kind. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting it wash over her. She didn't cry. She never cried on planes, but her hands curled gently into fists on her lap, holding all the emotion in place like paperweights. Then came the intercom. "This is your captain speaking. We are beginning our descent into New York City. Please return to your seats and ensure your seat belts are fastened." The cabin came alive with motion, the kind of rehearsed choreography every passenger knew. Seatbacks clicked upright, laptops closed, eyes darted around the cabin, but they didn't stop at Naomi's seat this time. They lingered, they watched, and Naomi knew why. This wasn't just about drama anymore. This was about consequence. A woman had crossed a line, and for once, someone was going to answer for it. The aircraft began its slow descent. The lights dimmed just slightly, a routine transition signaling the approach to landing. The flight crew moved through the cabin, checking seat belts, tray tables, and seat backs. But in seat 2C, Naomi Ellington remained still, untouched by the routine. She wasn't just waiting to land, she was waiting for what would come next. Behind her, passengers exchanged whispers. Small, hushed sentences passed between curious mouths and recording phones. The man in 3A tapped something into his notes app furiously. Dina Harper had not stopped filming since Trina was pulled into the galley. Naomi could feel all of it, but she didn't acknowledge it. She didn't need to. When you truly own something, you don't rush to prove it. You let the truth unfold itself, and it was about to. The cockpit door opened again. Captain Ronald Hayes stepped out, flanked by a uniformed security officer who had been seated discreetly in the jump seat near the front. He had stayed quiet this entire flight. No one had noticed him until now. But now, his presence shifted the atmosphere entirely. Captain Hayes addressed the cabin with steady composure. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice resonant and calm, "we will be landing in just under 20 minutes. I'd like to thank you for your cooperation during a challenging in-flight incident." He paused and glanced toward Naomi. "An internal matter involving crew conduct has been escalated to corporate and ground control. We take all passenger safety and dignity extremely seriously. A full review is underway." Passengers leaned closer to hear every word. Eyes flicked to Naomi. The hum of curiosity buzzed under every breath. Then the captain turned directly to her. "Miss Ellington," he said, "do you wish to remain seated until arrival, or would you like to move to the forward lounge to speak with corporate?" Now Naomi didn't blink. "I'll remain here," she said. "They can meet me at the jet bridge." Captain Hayes nodded. "Understood. Monica Sterling is en route." With that, he gave a curt nod to the security officer, who remained at the front, standing quietly with his hands folded, trained, professional, neutral, but alert. The captain returned to the cockpit. Raymond Cho exhaled softly and leaned over the aisle just enough for Naomi to hear. "You really are her," he said. Naomi turned slightly. "I am." Raymond let out a breath that was half awe, half regret. "I saw your keynote last year at the Clean Aviation Summit in D.C., he said. "You spoke about transforming equity in the air industry." Naomi offered a faint smile. "I remember that room. Most people left before I finished." He laughed quietly. "Not me. I stayed. It was the first time I heard someone say, 'Equity isn't a trend, it's a blueprint.'" Her smile faded just slightly, and yet here we are. Raymond looked down at his lap, the moment hitting him harder than he expected. "You know," he said, voice low, "I watched her walk up to you. I saw the way she looked at you, and I did nothing. I figured it wasn't my place." Naomi turned back to the window. Her voice came softly. "That's the thing. Silence always has a place, and it always costs something." Raymond didn't respond. He didn't need to. Behind them, Dina Harper leaned toward Lexi, who had taken a seat in the jump seat to steady herself after the chaos. "You're lucky," Dina whispered. Lexi looked confused. "What you get to tell people you were on the plane," Dina said. "The one where the owner shut everything down in silence." Lexi gave a shaky smile, not out of joy but out of nerves. "No one's ever going to believe me," she said, "unless they were here, in the galley." Trina McCall sat on the small metal crew bench, her head in her hands. Her shoulders rose and fell with uneven breaths. She wasn't crying, Not yet, but she wasn't okay. She stared down at her palms. Her fingers still buzzed from adrenaline and shame. It had happened so fast, too fast. The slap wasn't something she planned. It just happened. A blur of frustration, pride, and panic. A reach for control in the only way her body knew when her authority crumbled. And now, that moment would follow her for the rest of her life. She knew it. She had seen the looks. She had felt the shift in the cabin. She had lost everything. And worse, she couldn't even say she was surprised. Because deep down, she had known from the moment Naomi walked on that plane. She had known. She just didn't want to admit it. The curtain to the galley moved slightly. Lexi stepped inside. Trina didn't look up. "She's staying in her seat," Lexi said quietly. "HR will meet us at the jet bridge. So will airport security." Trina finally looked up. Her voice was hoarse. "I'm being fired mid-air." Lexi didn't respond at first. Then she said, "Trina, you hit the owner of the airline." Trina let out a shaky laugh, but it wasn't joyful. It was empty. She didn't even raise her voice. She whispered. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just looked at me, like I wasn't worth her time. Lexi crouched slightly beside her. "She gave you a chance to stop," she said, more than once. Trina's mouth trembled. "I thought she didn't belong there." Lexi stood up slowly. "You thought wrong." Trina sat back, her body slumped, her eyes glassy. "She's going to destroy me." Lexi shook her head gently. She didn't have to. "You did that yourself, in the cabin." The seatbelt sign lit up with a soft ding. Naomi looked at it, then down at her hands. She remembered a line from her favorite poem, the one her mother read to her the night she graduated from Spelman College. "Some people wear power like perfume. You can smell it before they enter the room. Others wear it like silence. You don't hear it until it's already shifted the room you're standing in." She had lived her life by that, and today it had carried her through again. The landing gear lowered beneath them. The engines slowed. New York City blinked beneath the clouds, the skyline glowing against the dusk. They were almost there, and the ground was ready. The wheels touched down with a thud and a jolt. It wasn't rough, it wasn't smooth, just real. The kind of landing that reminds every passenger they've crossed into another city, another moment, another chapter. The engines roared down to a hum. The cabin lights brightened. A few passengers exhaled with the relief that always follows a long flight. Belts clicked. Fingers hovered over phone screens waiting for airplane mode to lift. But no one stood. Not yet. Not after what had happened. Naomi Ellington sat with her seatbelt still fastened. Her hands were calm in her lap, her bag neatly zipped beneath the seat in front of her. To the outside eye, she looked like any other first-class traveler, composed, collected, patient. But to those who had witnessed what unfolded at 37,000 feet, she was no longer just a passenger. She was the woman who owned the sky. The seatbelt sign dimmed with a soft chime. Immediately, the co-pilot came on the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York. For safety and security, we ask that all passengers remain seated for a few additional moments. Airport personnel will be boarding the plane momentarily. We appreciate your cooperation." There was no further explanation, but everyone knew. Naomi took a slow breath and finally stood. The curtain behind the galley parted. Captain Ronald Hayes stepped out again, now joined by two uniformed airport security agents. Behind them, dressed in a navy blazer, slacks, and heels that clicked with precision, was Monica Sterling. Monica was corporate through and through. She didn't smile. She didn't scan the cabin for reactions. She walked like this was her job because it was. She paused at Naomi's row and spoke, not loudly, but clearly enough for half the cabin to hear. "Miss Ellington, thank you for your patience. We're ready when you are." Naomi gave a single nod. She picked up her bag and stepped into the aisle. As she passed Raymond Cho, he offered a quiet, "good luck" under his breath. She nodded again. "You too." Naomi walked toward the galley with Monica at her side. Dina Harper turned her phone off, but her eyes never left Naomi. The rear galley door opened. Trina McCall stepped out slowly, cautiously, as if stepping back into a world she no longer understood. Her face was pale, her uniform slightly wrinkled. Her name tag glinted under the cabin lights. She met Naomi's eyes. Naomi didn't flinch. Monica turned to Trina. Her voice was clipped and professional. "Ms. McCall, please come with me." Trina opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, to explain, maybe to beg, but then thought better of it. She nodded, once, and followed Monica, Naomi, and the agents down the jet bridge. Behind them, the silence stretched like a drumbeat. No one moved, not even when the cabin door swung open. No one wanted to miss what came next. As they walked down the tunnel, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Naomi's heels clicked steadily on the linoleum. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't angry. She was focused. At the gate, a cluster of airport staff stood waiting. A woman with a clipboard, a man with a headset, another flight operations agent holding a tablet. Monica motioned toward the side wall near Gate 12B, where 2 chairs had been placed. "Miss Ellington, would you prefer to speak privately, or—" "Here is fine," Naomi said. Monica nodded. "Very well." She turned to the flight operations team. "This is Naomi Ellington, majority stakeholder and founder of Ellington Air Group. Any statements or inquiries from this point forward are to be directed through corporate legal or her executive team." Trina's mouth opened in disbelief. She had heard it on the plane, but hearing it again here confirmed, reinforced, made it real. She wasn't just wrong. She had misjudged the woman who had the power to end her entire career. Monica turned to her now. "Ms. McCall," she said, "we have reviewed partial cabin footage, audio reports, and crew testimony. At this time, based on immediate safety protocols, you are being placed on indefinite suspension pending further investigation." Trina's eyes widened. "I made a mistake. I lost my temper. But I didn't mean." Monica held up a hand. "This isn't about intent," she said. "It's about action. A physical altercation with a passenger is a zero-tolerance offense. You know that." "But I didn't know who she was," Trina said, her voice cracking. "I thought she was just what Naomi asked quietly." Trina turned to her, eyes glassy. Naomi stepped forward slowly, her tone calm but cutting. "You keep saying that you didn't know who I was. But what difference would it have made if I were just another passenger? Just another woman in seat 2C? Would the slap have been okay?" Then Trina shook her head, but no words came out. Monica gave Naomi a glance, one that acknowledged the power of that question, before turning back to protocol. "Ms. McCall, please surrender your badge and employee ID." With trembling fingers, Trina reached into her blazer and handed over her badge. She didn't look at Naomi again. She just lowered her head and followed the security officers down the terminal walkway. Naomi watched her go. She felt no triumph, only closure. Monica turned to her again. "Would you like an escort to the lounge, Miss Ellington?" Naomi shook her head. "No, I'll walk." Monica extended her hand. "Thank you for your restraint, and for reminding all of us who this airline belongs to." Naomi shook her hand once, firmly. Then she picked up her bag and turned toward the corridor. As she walked through the terminal, passengers began disembarking behind her. Some stared, some whispered, a few nodded with something like respect. Naomi didn't look back. She walked forward, one step at a time, heels echoing across the marble floor. She wasn't just leaving a gate. She was walking into a new phase of power. No announcements, no speeches, just presence. And that was enough. Naomi Ellington stepped out into the August heat of New York's JFK terminal. Her heels struck pavement as the private SUV pulled around the corner. Her assistant, Jordan, stood at the rear passenger door, phone in hand, eyes wide. "Ma'am," he said breathlessly, "I've been trying to reach you for the last 40 minutes. Naomi raised her brow, nonchalant. "I was on a flight." Jordan opened the car door but didn't let her step in just yet. "You might want to see this first," he said, holding out his phone. She took it. The video was already playing. Shaky footage, iPhone angle, a woman filming from first class, camera trained on Naomi's seat. Trina McCall's voice filled the audio, followed by the slap, clear, audible, brutal in its casualness, gasps, murmurs, a camera shift to Naomi's face, then her calm, steady reply, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Jordan swiped to the next clip. It was the aftermath, the captain speaking, Lexi stepping in. The moment Naomi revealed her identity, the captions were already trending. "Black woman slapped on flight. Turns out she owns the airline. CEO humiliates racist flight attendant in front of entire plane." Naomi Ellington breaks silence after onboard attack. Naomi looked up. How viral Jordan swallowed. 32 million views, and climbing. She nodded slowly, then handed the phone back and stepped into the car. Inside the vehicle, it was cool, quiet, a rare moment of stillness. Jordan followed quickly, shutting the door behind him and pulling out a second phone. "Monica's team wants to schedule a press statement. PR is freaking out. Legal's asking if you want to press charges. CNN wants an exclusive, and the mayor's office called. Apparently, someone filmed a city employee applauding your response in the terminal." Naomi didn't respond right away. She stared out the window at the terminal behind her. Jordan sat, nervous. "Finally," she said, "I need 2 hours. No calls, no statements." Jordan blinked. "Ma'am, I'm not ready to speak for the world yet," Naomi said. "First, I need to speak for myself." The car pulled away from the curb. Outside, screens continued to refresh. Hashtags piled up. Every image of Naomi walking calmly, speaking softly, holding her ground was now being dissected across the internet. Some praised her elegance, others debated protocol, a few, already predictable, questioned the facts, but the truth had already landed, and the world was watching. 2 hours later. Naomi sat alone in her penthouse apartment in Manhattan, overlooking the Hudson. She wore a soft white blouse and loose slacks. Her heels were off. Her hair was wrapped. She sat in silence. Her laptop was open, a blinking cursor on the screen. She could hear the world from her window traffic, voices, the distant wail of sirens. But inside, she was still. She thought about her mother again, about the long nights she spent studying while her mom worked overtime shifts as a nurse, about the conversations at dinner when they'd talk about the world not being fair, but how you still had to show up. She remembered her mother saying, "Sometimes dignity is the only weapon you've got left." Today, it had been her shield. She opened a blank document and began to type. Not a statement, not a press release, a letter to herself. She wrote, "I didn't want to become a symbol today. I didn't want to be a headline or a rallying cry or a talking point. I wanted to fly across the country in peace. I wanted to sit in the seat I paid for, wearing the skin I was born with, without being questioned. But I was questioned, and when I answered, I was doubted, and when I stood my ground, I was struck, and still I did not raise my voice. Still I did not threaten. Still I did not retaliate, because I've spent my entire life learning how to hold the rage of 1,000 silent injustices and turn it into strategy. But I am tired of strategy. I am tired of teaching people who already know better. I am tired of forgiving offenses that never should have happened in the first place. So, today, I will not speak for the media. I will not speak for the brand. I will speak only for the woman in 2C, the woman who stayed calm, who stayed rooted, who reminded the sky who it belonged to. I am her, and she is me." Naomi saved the letter. Then she closed the laptop. The next morning, she woke up to 73 missed calls, 10 from journalists, 12 from her board, 3 from her former professor at Wharton, and 1 from her mother. She called her back first. Her mother answered on the second ring. "I saw," she said simply. Naomi sat at the edge of her bed. "You always said I'd have to be stronger. I never thought it would be on camera." Her mother replied, "But you handled it." Naomi's voice softened. "Did I do the right thing?" There was a pause on the other end, and then her mother said, "You didn't flinch. That was the right thing." Naomi closed her eyes. She hadn't cried yet, but she did then, silently, the kind of tears that come not from sadness, but from release, from the weight of holding too much, too long. When she hung up, she finally picked up the call from Monica. The voice on the other end was all business. "Naomi," Monica said, "the board wants you to lead the response." Naomi took a breath. "No," she said, "the world wants a response, but what it needs is a reckoning." Monica was quiet. "So what do you want to do?" Naomi stood walking to the window, barefoot on the hardwood floor. "I want every employee retrained. I want every executive to fly commercial this month, in coach. I want our hiring data public by next quarter. I want the apology from our company, not just to me, but to every passenger who's ever been questioned in silence." And Trina Naomi exhaled slowly. "She'll never fly again. But I don't need her punished. I need her to understand." "I'll make it happen," Monica said. As she hung up, Naomi stood by the window. The skyline stretched before her, endless, unyielding, complicated, just like justice. But this time, she wasn't going to whisper about it. She was going to build it at exactly 11 UROA Eastern Time. Naomi Ellington walked into the press room on the 48th floor of Ellington Air Group's Manhattan headquarters. She wore a deep navy pantsuit, sharp at the shoulder but soft at the collar. No flashy jewelry, no designer branding. Just her name badge, simple and deliberate, that read Naomi Ellington, Employee No 0001. The press was already assembled, CNN, Reuters, the New York Times, Aviation Digest, even a few rising YouTubers and podcast journalists invited by her team. The room, like the plane just days before, went silent the second she stepped in. There was no podium, no prepared speech, just a single standing mic in the center of the room. She stepped up to it, cleared her throat, and then she spoke. 3 days ago, I boarded a flight as a black woman, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, not as the founder of this company. Just a woman in seat 2C. Her voice was steady, unhurried. I was questioned. I was disrespected. I was struck. Cameras clicked, phones rolled, heads nodded. But this story is not just about me. This is about the millions of passengers who have flown through our skies and felt unseen. It's about every mother flying alone who was asked twice for her boarding pass, every immigrant who was pulled aside at the gate, every teenager whose accent was mocked while asking for help. Naomi paused. She scanned the room. The skies belong to all of us, not just the ones who look like they belong in first class. That line sent a ripple through the audience. She continued, I founded this airline because I wanted to reimagine what flying could feel like. But somewhere along the line, we started looking too much like everyone else. Same hiring playbooks, same service scripts, same unchecked power dynamics hiding behind professionalism. Her eyes softened, but her tone stayed firm. I'm not here to punish, I'm here to rebuild, and we start today. She unfolded a single piece of paper, just one. I'm announcing the following actions, effective immediately. First, every Ellington Air employee, from the executive suite to the ground crew, will undergo mandatory immersive training on racial equity, empathy, and conscious bias. Not just a one-day slideshow. Real, lived training, ongoing, audited. Second, all our hiring and promotion data, broken down by race, gender, and role, will be made public quarterly. Third, we will create an independent passenger protection board made up of flyers, not just corporate lawyers. Any passenger incident, any mistreatment will be reviewed with power shared by those who live the experience. Fourth, executive leadership, including myself, will spend the next 30 days flying commercial, in economy, no private jets, no pre-boarding. We will sit in the world we built. Reporters scribbled faster. Some looked stunned, others looked visibly moved. Naomi let the words land. Then she said, more quietly, This isn't about canceling a flight attendant. It's about recognizing how small moments reveal big systems. And if we want to change air travel, we have to start by changing who we protect when no one's recording. Someone in the back stood up without being called on. It was a woman, maybe late 20s, black. Braids pulled back under a press badge that read Flight Crew Stories, an independent blog that tracked working conditions in aviation. Her voice wavered slightly. Miss Ellington, may I ask, how did it feel to stay silent in that moment? On the plane, Naomi didn't blink. It didn't feel brave. She said, it felt necessary. She paused, because I knew the cameras would come out. I knew the world would only see a version of me, but I wanted to make sure the story was about more than retaliation. I wanted to show what it looks like when we stay grounded, even while being shaken. The room hung on that sentence. She stepped back from the mic. I'll be issuing no further comments today. The reforms speak for themselves. I'm heading to the airport. Someone called after her. Are you flying out? She glanced over her shoulder with a quiet smile. I am. Row 19 seat, B. A few chuckles followed. but mostly admiration. As she exited, the flashbulbs went off again, not just for her face, but for the idea that something had shifted. Not just for Ellington Air, but maybe for all of them. Hours later, on social media, the video of her speech hit 1 million views in under an hour. Within 5, it had reached 10 million. By nightfall, it had surpassed the original slap video, but this time, the narrative wasn't chaos, it was clarity. On Twitter, a new hashtag began trending. Row 19 Revolution. One user posted she got slapped in silence and answered with an entire revolution. That's how you lead. Others shared their own flight stories under the same tag. I was pulled off a flight because they didn't believe my name matched my ticket. Row 19 Revolution. Ellington Air just made me believe in leadership again. I'm flying with them next time. Dina Harper, the woman who had filmed the original video, posted a follow-up vlog. I thought I was recording a viral moment. Turns out, I was recording a movement. That wasn't just a woman getting disrespected. That was power recalibrating itself. In real time, back in Naomi's penthouse, Jordan paced behind the couch. Stunned. You're everywhere. CNN just ran the full speech. Ava DuVernay tweeted it. Even that British professor you love quoted it. Naomi sipped a glass of water, the one who wrote about quiet resistance. That's the one, he said. Naomi Ellington reminds us that dignity doesn't whisper, it resonates. Naomi smiled slightly. Good line. Jordan nodded. I guess the only question now is, what happens next? Naomi looked out the window, then back at him. We keep flying. The next morning, Naomi Ellington rose before the sun. She didn't sleep much anymore. Her mind wasn't racing, it had passed that stage. Now, it was sharpening. She moved through her penthouse with the quiet grace of someone who had learned to claim stillness in a loud world. Her phone buzzed. A notification from her assistant, Jordan. Courier arrived. Urgent letter hand-delivered from JFK. Naomi walked to the front door. A thin envelope, off-white with a navy border, rested on the console beneath the mirror. She turned it over. No return address, just her name, handwritten. She opened it slowly and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was surprisingly elegant. It began, Miss Ellington. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to say this not because I expect forgiveness, but because I owe you the truth. My name is Trina McCall. You know me now as the woman who struck you, but I wasn't always that woman. Naomi blinked, surprised. She sat down on the edge of her velvet bench, eyes fixed to the page. I've worked as a flight attendant for over 25 years. I've served celebrities, heads of state, college kids on their first trip, and soldiers coming home. I've seen the best and worst of people at 35,000 feet. Somewhere along the way, I started carrying a wall around with me, the kind that grows when you feel invisible too long. That doesn't excuse what I did. When you walked onto that plane, I didn't see a threat. I didn't see a CEO. I didn't even see a human being. I saw a mirror, and I didn't like what it showed me. Naomi paused. The words weren't defensive. They weren't groveling either, just raw. I was raised by a black mother who told me to always keep my head down. I followed rules. I worked overtime. I sacrificed holidays. I got overlooked for promotions by people with half my experience. I watched corporate women walk on board with briefcases and blowouts and think they owned the sky. So, when I saw you well-dressed, confident, young, I didn't see someone to admire. I saw everything I thought I'd never be. I don't remember making the decision to slap you. It wasn't planned, but I take full responsibility. I won't fight the suspension. I won't defend my actions. But I wanted to thank you for not striking back, for showing grace when I gave you none, for forcing the industry and me to confront the truth. Naomi stared at the final lines. I hope someday, long after this fades from the headlines, that people remember what you did not say as much as what you did, and if they ever write about me, I hope they don't call me a villain, just a woman who got it wrong and learned. Trina Naomi let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She didn't know what she expected, maybe denial, maybe silence, but not this. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. Then she sat in silence. No music, no buzz of her phone, just the morning light creeping across the floor. Her heart ached not out of pity, but from something deeper, a recognition. Trina's story wasn't rare. It was wrapped in layers of exhaustion, buried dreams, and invisible scars. The system wasn't built to hold everyone the same, and sometimes even the oppressed became the enforcers without realizing it. But this letter, this was a shift. Later that day, Jordan walked in as she reviewed a series of passenger policy drafts. He caught her expression softer than usual. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I got a letter." He raised an eyebrow, from whom Naomi looked up. "The woman who hit me." Jordan straightened. "You serious I am? Was it apologetic?" Naomi thought for a moment. It was honest. Jordan studied her. "Are you going to respond?" She didn't answer immediately. "I'm going to write something," she said finally, but not to her directly. He tilted his head. "To the public, no," she said. "To the next generation." That evening, Naomi opened her laptop again. This time, she didn't write a corporate statement or a public-facing pledge. She wrote a letter titled "To the Girl in Row 22C," and it read, "I know how you feel. You sat down and already felt like you didn't belong. The woman next to you wouldn't meet your eyes." The man across the aisle clutched his bag a little tighter. You adjusted your posture, lowered your voice, tried not to take up too much space. "But I want you to know you belong here. In this cabin, in this industry, in this world. I see you, and I am you. You don't need to fight every battle to be powerful. Sometimes your stillness is the resistance. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is stay seated. And when the turbulence comes, because it will don't rise to anger, rise to impact. Your presence matters more than they'll ever admit. But one day, they'll see, because one day, you'll own the sky too. Love, Naomi." She clicked save. Then she uploaded it to the company's internal portal with a single caption, "Coming soon to every flight manual." By midnight, over 14,000 employees had read it. Hundreds replied. One pilot wrote, "20 years in this field. Never felt more proud to wear these wings." A baggage handler messaged, "I cried reading this on break. I've felt invisible for too long. Thank you." A 19-year-old new hire from customer service wrote, "First week on the job. Wasn't sure if I fit in. Now I'm staying." Naomi read every comment. She didn't respond to them all. She didn't need to. The words had already landed. And sometimes, when the world feels too loud, you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to speak with purpose. It was 2 weeks later when Naomi Ellington walked into Terminal C of LaGuardia Airport. She didn't wear sunglasses. She didn't travel with a team. She carried her own luggage, a simple black roller with one scuffed corner. The only thing that hinted at who she was, if anything, was her posture upright, composed, quiet power in motion. Security barely blinked. She'd made it policy for all senior executives to pass through TSA just like everyone else. No shortcuts, no side doors. By the time she reached the gate, she noticed something different. People were watching her, but not like before. Not with suspicion, with recognition. Some looked down respectfully, others nodded silently, almost reverently. One woman mouthed, "Thank you." She didn't need to ask what for. At gate 37, a gate agent spotted her and stood up straighter. "Miss Ellington," she said. "It's an honor." Naomi smiled. "Thank you. Just Naomi today." The agent handed her a printed boarding pass, even though it had already been sent digitally. "Middle seat in row 14, the woman said with a playful smirk. "I figured you'd want to see how the new legroom update feels." Naomi laughed under her breath. "I wouldn't miss it." She walked toward the boarding line. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother, Evelyn Ellington. "Just watched your row 22C letter on the news. Beautiful. I'm still telling everyone I'm your mother." Naomi smiled. Another buzz came in. Jordan Matthews. "The board approved every initiative. Full support. You've changed the game. Again." She tucked the phone away. This wasn't about her anymore. The boarding process was smooth, efficient. Flight attendants smiled as passengers entered. No one rushed. No one glared. She approached the entrance to the jet bridge and stopped. One of the flight attendants, a tall woman with silver streaks in her braids, paused as she saw her. "Miss Ellington," she said. Naomi looked up. "Yes." The woman leaned in and whispered, "My name is Tamara. 22 years with this airline. I've seen a lot, but I've never seen anyone do what you just did." Naomi nodded with warmth. "Thank you, Tamara." Tamara's eyes softened. "We've got your back, all of us. Just so you know." With that, she waved her through, inside the plane. Naomi found her seat in 14B between a teenage boy glued to his Nintendo Switch and a woman wearing a Rutgers hoodie scribbling in a journal. Neither seemed to recognize her. She liked that. As the plane began taxiing, Naomi looked around the cabin. There were tiny, quiet changes everywhere. The safety briefing was delivered with warmth. Passengers of all backgrounds sat in every row. Flight attendants made gentle eye contact when offering water. It was subtle, but it was a beginning. As the plane lifted off the runway, Naomi felt that familiar pressure in her chest, the engine's roar, the upward pull, the city shrinking beneath them. For years, flying had been her empire, but now it felt like her community. She reached into her tote and pulled out a small leather journal, the same one her mother had given her in college. She opened to a blank page and started writing a new entry. August 30, row 14, seat B, en route to Chicago. Today is different, not because I'm flying commercial, not because I'm in the middle seat, but because for the first time in a long time, I feel the skies shifting, not just the plane, the people, the energy. It's working. She paused, then added, "I still think about Trina. I think about how quickly things fall apart when we stop seeing each other. I wonder what she's doing right now. I hope she's learning. I hope she's okay." She closed the journal. The woman beside her noticed the initials on the front. E, she said. "Nice monogram. Evelyn Ellington." Naomi blinked. "That's my mother." The woman laughed. She wrote that piece on nurse advocacy back in the early 2000s. Right. I studied that in college. Brilliant woman. Naomi smiled. She is. The woman extended her hand. I'm Marissa. Naomi. She replied. They shook hands. Small world. The plane soared above the clouds, steady and smooth. Naomi reclined slightly and closed her eyes. Images passed through her mind like clouds outside the window. The slap, the silence, the stares, the speech, the letter, the girl in row 22C, the women in jump seats whispering, "We see you," the employees lifting each other, the ripple that had become a wave. Naomi thought about legacy, not the kind etched in marble or shouted from podiums, the quiet kind, the kind that changes how people move through the world, how they treat strangers, how they respond to tension. That's the legacy she wanted, not just an airline, a movement in the air. When the captain's voice came through the intercom with weather updates, Naomi opened her eyes. Clear skies ahead, just as she'd hoped, just as she'd promised. As the wheels touch down and the cabin door opens, we're left with more than just a landing. Naomi Ellington's story reminds us that true power doesn't roar. It resonates in the choices we make when no one else is looking. We feel her strength, we honor her composure, and we stand by her refusal to be silenced. Yet we also condemn the bias that nearly cost her dignity and career. Discrimination may linger unseen on every flight, but each of us has the chance to challenge it, one act of empathy at a time. Thank you for joining us on this emotional descent from injustice to hope. If Naomi's courage moved you, give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss our next story of resilience and change. Until next time, keep flying with respect.